Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of SGI Talks. I will be your moderator for this afternoon. My name is Rawan Radwan. Please welcome to the stage with me Dr. Hong and Engineer Ahmed. Well, today's talk is quite exciting. So let's just to give a bit of context. Saudi Arabia is made up of semi-arid and arid. It's an arid and semi-arid nation. We have multiple challenges that we're facing, but we have the best experts at hand to not only find the right solutions, but come up with great strategies for the long run and for sustainability for the future of the next generations. So, Dr. Hong, Engineer Ahmed, thank you again for coming today. Let's start with the obvious. We have a problem with water scarcity. We have vegetation, natural habitat, of course, but we're facing a challenge of finding the solution to provide sufficient water use for not just the environment, but also for people. And as the country continues to develop and move forward, how are we addressing these challenges, and how did SGI come up to find the solution?
Maybe I can first start with the obvious challenge, which is in terms of water issues in the hyper-arid environment like that of Saudi Arabia. So clearly water scarcity is a major bottleneck to any potential future developments, as well as the ambitious goals related to the Saudi Green Initiative. And I think as part of the effort to really identify and address these major bottlenecks is to first identify what are the sustainable sources of water that the kingdom would have, which I think it is already identified that we have 4 major water taps that we can tap into. The first, of course, is the groundwater, which of course we have to protect and provide sufficient time to rejuvenate and replenish the current groundwater levels. The second water tap would be obviously desalinated water. Saudi Arabia is one of the largest global producer of desalinated water, and will continue to be so in the near future. The third water tap is obviously treated wastewater. And the fourth water tap would be from the atmosphere, because Saudi Arabia is certain areas of Saudi Arabia is rather having high humidity, so harvesting atmospheric water to then utilize those water would be obviously another strategy. So it's not just about identifying the water taps, it's also about quantifying the amount of water resources we have and tracking the usage of the water to make sure that the water balances are accounted for that are very important to addressing water scarcity.
Yeah. Engineer Ahmed, we have a very unique environment. We have natural habitats, of course, in the southwestern region of Saudi Arabia, where there's an abundance of forest land, but not so much across Saudi Arabia. SGI came and said, we want to plant 10 billion trees. That's a very ambitious goal, and one that some people would say it's not doable, but we are seeing the fruits of that labor, and we are seeing numbers in the millions so far. Can you give us a little bit more about the master plan of how this came to be?
Well, first of all, assalamu alaikum, and thank you to give us this opportunity. The obvious fact, it's doable, and inshallah it's achievable, because things that, let me start with the international context. Why the idea of the SGI in general it comes? Because we are part of the world, and unfortunately the land degradation is increasing year by year, and we are losing around 1.2 billion hectares of land because of the land degradation. We are also in general losing around 10 trillion US dollar from the international GDP because of the land degradation. And also the land, or what they call it, the eco-services give us or contribute around to more than 40 trillion US dollar they contribute to the international GDP. So it's really very important to come with a great initiative and ambitious initiative to restore land, to protect the land, and also to protect the next generation or the future generation. In general, after the announcement of the SGI by His Royal Highness, there was a lot of entities, government, private, and NGOs, they committed to plant also trees in Saudi Arabia. And we are also in the NCVC luckily get the opportunity, and we are proud that's to handle the master plan and also to study the whole Saudi environment. Of course, it's not only NCVC, but with all stakeholders, all government entities. We use a lot more than 50 experts from all around the world, and the local experts and international universities. And we come really with the master plans. We divide the country to different, what you call it, domains, environmental domains, urban domains, agriculture domains, and highways, and also area under special administration. Then also we cascade it to, we call it action zone. So mangrove action zone, mountain action zone, and so on. Then we study every piece of the land using the satellite imageries, using also field visit, sampling, and also using the old, I would say when we said the satellite, the old pictures or the old, it goes back to 50s or 60s, and to see also, is it desert or it's been desertified because of the human intervention and others. And then we come with all that's the possible strategy. That's one of the greatest strategy, protect the existing vegetation covers. And luckily we have more than 2,500 type of vegetation covers. That's Saudi Arabia is rich. We have more than 1.5% of Saudi land, which equivalent to, it's bigger than a lot of European countries. It's forest. It's really forest. We have also more than 200 square meters. It's mangrove. It's mangrove forest. So it's a rich place, and it's been under the pressure of the degradation for so many reasons, and now we want to start it. Our master plan actually starts from since His Royal Highness announcement. Then the first phase, it will be in 2030. Then we go all the way till 2100. So we are proud. We are one of I think, the unique country that we plan, especially enhancing or restoring the land for more than 75 years. And really, we are proud. And we are, as Saudi, we have to be proud from, let's say, our leadership when they announce their ambition, and also what we have achieved so far.
Well, to make sure that this master plan comes into action and ensure success, there are strategies and policies, and technology and innovation play a major role here. Could you give us a little bit more information about how technology and fostering new technology from the national centers that you mentioned, of course, and collaborations with COUS and other entities, we're able to see the fruits of that? We are seeing things that are happening right now with the plantation of mangrove forests and afforestation, urban afforestation as well. So let's talk a little bit about the technologies here.
So I can talk a little bit about the water technologies. So I think obviously we've already had the consensus that groundwater is a non-renewable resource in Saudi Arabia and something that we don't want to further stress. So therefore, looking at desalination water is one option, and looking at treated wastewater can be another option, and of course harvesting atmospheric water as well. So in terms of, let's say, desalination water, I think there are plans, major plans actually, to decarbonize desalination, because I think desalination is a relatively mature technology right now, but it is still incurring a lot of energy in order to use desalination water. So I think Saudi Arabia has major plans in terms of technological investment to decarbonize the entire desalination process. And when I meant decarbonize, meant that it's no longer using non-renewable fuels or carbon-based fuels to sustain desalination, but rather to use renewable energy like even hydrogen or solar energy for the desalination plant. Then looking at treated wastewater in terms of technological improvements, there are also major advancements in terms of the way that we are cleaning wastewater, because the current way that we are cleaning wastewater is still also a rather energy-intensive process. Of course, it's lower energy than desalination purpose, but it's still requiring electrical energy or that is based on carbon-based fuels to clean those wastewater and at the same time emit greenhouse gas emissions from the treatment process itself, and also remove valuable nutrients like ammonium and phosphate. So I think there are plans to look into how we can tap into the current technological advancements, for instance, moving from an aerobic energy-intensive wastewater cleaning technology to an anaerobic base, which means in the absence of oxygen, that can then harvest energy from the waste streams itself, and then retain the nutrients in those wastewater that can be used as a free liquid fertilizers to sustain plant growth. So those are the technological advancements I think that has been looked into as part of the initiative. And because it's not just about planting trees, which Engineer Ahmed already mentioned just now, it is also about how we can do it in a very, very sustainable way, bearing in mind that water is a major constraint.
Mm-hmm. Water scarcity, and now that Dr. Hong mentioned the use of treated wastewater. This is also something, a mandate that the center is also adopting. You don't use anything from the natural groundwater, no desalination. It's wastewater treated, and you are using this where exactly? Could you maybe, is it only in urban areas? Is it also in the natural environment?
Well, luckily it's part also of I think the Vision 2030, that's to convert most of the treated water to a tertiary treatment. It will be also almost, I would say, close to the fresh water, and it could be used for agriculture and others. As I mentioned, that we have a rich country with a plant, so we're going to use only the native trees. That if we use our native trees, that it could also, it's been adapted for this harsh weather or the climate. So that it will give us also the opportunity that it doesn't need much water, so it could survive with our environment. So using the irrigation, and also we have a lot of pilot projects to use also to study the right water requirement, what we call it for each tree. And using different subsurface irrigation by using, of course, the treated water. So using the native trees, that it gives us opportunity to minimize the water requirements. That's one thing. Using the seawater by planting mangrove, that's another opportunity, increasing the mangrove forest, and using the water harvesting, because even though we are, I would say we are a dry country, but in some areas it has also a high water range, or that's under the flooded, it has flooded. So capturing the water and storing the water and using the water and use it for plantation, and use it for different type of plantation, whether in the agriculture, in the mountain terraces, and in the Whatis, that also to give us the opportunity. Using most of the treated water, it's used in the urban, and I think we are proud that people who visit Riyadh, they have seen a greening everywhere, green Riyadh. And also we touch it and we feel it, that's the increasing the temperature. And luckily, by planting more trees and protecting more plants, this year we don't have any sandstorm. That's because of the plantation, and we are proud that what we have done, increasing the protected area and organizing the grazing and increasing the vegetation cover, or the cover project in general, cloud seeding, it gives us the opportunity that's also we could feel it and touch it, because it's not really luxury planting trees. It's part, it will increase the life, I would say, the quality of life, and it will affect all of us.
Could we also add the fact that we are using, even so it's a natural environment and it's natural trees, and they're indigenous to Saudi Arabia, of course, but also in the urban areas and urban centers, we're using specific trees and shrubs that are combatant to climate change, that don't use a lot of water. So we stopped using even I heard that they were recommending that not to plant too many palm trees even inside the urban areas, because they don't want to tap into something.
Well, palm trees, this is economic trees, and it's the symbol of the country, and it has to be treated as one of the economic source, because it's producing trees and other. I think the reason why they did not plant it for different reasons, and especially
they're beautiful.
Definitely, it's beautiful, and it's economic, and it's better to use it and to plant it in the right farms. And it could also increase the production and also the economic value. That's one thing. It's part, as we mentioned, as part of the master plan. We identify all the suitable plants to be planted, whether in the natural domains or in the urban domains. So even with a minimum importing trees that it could be used in the urban, that we try to use also trees that it doesn't have invasive, I would say, techniques that it could be invasive in the native trees, and also it's increasing the canopy cover. That's very important, increasing the canopy cover in the urban, and also it's required less water requirements. But again, it's as I mentioned, that this is one of the first study that it's been conducted in this scale, and I think they will be followed with a lot of coordination and cooperation with the Innovation Center and university, especially when it comes to the right water requirements for each tree that's to be planted. And of course, I think again, the water, it's not only it's a limitation, but there's a lot of way to fetch the water from home, also from atmosphere, and also from after the rain, the flood, that it could be used, and it could benefit the plantation and also reduce the risk of the flood.
How do you find the balance between demand and water conservation? There's a very high demand, where the number of people in Saudi Arabia is growing, and of course, the development projects are growing. How do we find the balance between demand for water with the need for conservation?
So I personally don't think there is a direct conflict between water conservation and our increasing water demand. So when we talk about water conservation, it's more about saving water on a per individual or per entity basis. So which means that every individual and every entity are hopefully going to conserve water, which means that they use less water per person or per entity. But when we look at the increase in the population growth, currently Saudi Arabia has about 34 million people, and by 2050 is expected to increase rather significantly in terms of the population growth, and every individual is going to generate water and waste water. And then likewise, in terms of GDP growth and industrial activities growth, we're going to increase our water demand, which means more wastewater is going to be generated as well. So as long as there's a way to capture whatever water that is generated and utilized and then recycle it, we are essentially closing the water cycle loop. So obviously, we should be encouraging water conservation, because every water that we produce and clean requires energy to use them. But in terms of the total water balance, because of the growth in population, because of the growth in GDP activities, we're going to expect more water that's to be generated that can then be captured and reused to sustain our activities as well. So in theory, there's no direct conflict between these two.
Engineer Ahmed, do you agree?
Well, I think there is a lot of awareness program that's to conserve water and to reduce, if I'm not wrong, the consumption from 270 liters per day to 150 or something like that. It's part of the vision. And there is, I think, our colleagues in National Water Company and Deputy Chief of Water and others, they're working hard also to educate and using the sophisticated technology, even proved also technology for water in general. That's one thing. And the other thing also, using, of course, as Prof. Shi mentioned, with the increasing of the population and the economic cycle in Saudi Arabia, that it might be also increasing the water demand in general, but also using using a lot of technology, especially when it comes to the gray water separation and others, that it will give us opportunity to spare a source of water that it could be used in the industry, to use in the other purpose, and also in the agriculture and the plantation. So it's a balance, in general, and it's a balance, and it's need how you I would say how you look to it from different perspective. But I think what we are doing so far and increasing, and if you could see also here in a lot of initiative related to the water and using gray water separation, using high technology for water treatment, that will, I would say, will increase. We will, first of all, we will decrease the water consumption and will increase of the water source in general.
It seems that it comes full circle.
Yeah.
The collaborative effort between entities across the board is very clear, very evident, and we're seeing results. Since you mentioned awareness and the reduction of consumption or use or smarter ways to use water, of course, whether it's in the household or industrial water, it's a very smart and very important move. How do you think that SGI is aligning with Saudi Arabia's broader goals for water security and especially desertification control? We have a problem with desertification and we're fixing it. Engineer Ahmed, could you give us a little bit more information on the desertification control and how SGI goals are aligning with Saudi Arabia's goals?
Well, I think there is a major steps. Announcing or the planting 10 billion trees. This is one of the I would say the goal or the objective to reduce the desertification in Saudi Arabia, and we are part also of the world. It's the 10 billion trees. It's part of the MGI also. It's 20% of the MGI target. So that's really which is need a lot of resource and a lot of with different resource, financial resource and others. That's also to help to mitigating and I would say reversing the land from desertification to be a land that it will be more productive land. That's one thing. The other thing also hosting the COP16 next year. And we capitalize on that. There will be a major announcement, and there will be also a lot of efforts to help other countries combating desertification and to increase the land productivity. The National Center for Early Warning from Sandstorm, it's a national center. It's one of the MGI. It's been announced, I think, 2 years ago that's also to try to come with a lot of simulation and study a lot of source for especially the sandstorm, and mainly because of the desertification. So there's a lot of major activities and efforts in the country to combating the desertification and to convert the land to be more productive land, whether for agriculture or for other sources. Managing grazing in Saudi Arabia, and also a lot of efforts to manage the grazing and also to educate the herd owners how to also and convert them to the modern breeding center, or that's one of the efforts in the country to combat the desertification. So in general, I think we are moving very fast, and I think we are even faster than others, especially when it comes to the environment in general, and especially when it comes to combating desertification.
I'd like to ask, when did we realize it is a major problem?
Well, I think since the vision started in 2016, they realized that we have to put a lot of efforts in environment in general, starting with establishing the first, I think, in Ministry for Environment in the Kingdom, and also formulating and approve the National Environmental Strategy, environmental law, and the environmental ecosystem or operating system in general, different center, and one of them the National Center for developing the vegetation cover and combating desertification. So this back to 2016 when the vision it's been formulated, and think they announced, they realized the risk of in general and the risk in desertification and in other risk in environment in general.
Can I also add on
Yes,
one point about the SGI? I think desertification control is definitely one important element of the SGI, but SGI is not just about planting trees. SGI is really accounting, the carbon footprints, and identifying, as part of the strategy of planting the trees, identifying what needs to be better done in order to work towards a more sustainable environment and a sustainable way of doing things. And that's why that's really good about the planting tree efforts, because as part of the report that COUS, in collaboration with NCVC, of course with other entities as well, there is certain areas that previously was kind of neglected. For instance, the way we are cleaning our wastewater, the way we are producing desalinated water, how can we harvest water and all this. Those are things that were identified as part of the strategy to plant the trees. So SGI is not just about planting trees, but it's also about asking ourselves, how can we do it in a more sustainable way? What can we do to improve our technologies to work towards sustainability? And at the same time, getting the different stakeholders, which is actually one important goal of SGI, the different stakeholders to not work in individual silos, but to come together to really create synergy in the way that we do things. So those are actually very important goals of SGI, and I think it really aligns with the way that we are planting the trees and identifying what are the limitations and working towards addressing those limitations.
Smart practices goes a long way. Adopting these smart practices, and as you mentioned, collaborative effort. And it's not just on a national scale, it's also on an international scale, as SGI and MGI are part of the same picture. Adopting these technologies and adopting these new creative strategies also require adaptation to newer challenges. And every year or every now and then we hear of something new happening. As you mentioned, this year, for example, we don't have as much sandstorms, alhamdulillah, and which is a major achievement. This shows that we're actually doing the right thing. But also collaborative effort, Dr. Hong, you tapped into that, and there are many entities that are working together, but of course each within its own capacity. But how do you think we can adopt and adapt to the challenges?
I think there are definitely there's a lot of initiative that's happening at Saudi Arabia at the ministry level, for instance. I think let's say, for instance, Ministry of Environment and Water Agriculture has, since a few years ago, set up a unit that is more towards promoting research development and research collaboration. So it's like they're envisioning it more like a so-called a trial basis where failures are accepted. And to encourage people to really do some high-risk technological improvements and try to break the ceiling in terms of those technological improvements. I think at COUS as well, we are encouraged to really look at how technology developments can truly make an impact. And so those are the ways that I think Saudi Arabia is really challenging and challenging the ceiling in terms of the way that we are doing things and taking a positive step. Of course, there are still certain challenges. I think, for instance, one is like not just limited to Saudi Arabia, but globally as well. A lot of the regulatory practices, regulations are based on, let's say, 50, 100 years ago, when technology is at a different level as what we are doing now. Just using an example, for instance, the current regulation require the amount of nutrients in the treated wastewater to be at a certain limit. For instance, total nitrogen 15 mg per liters. And if anything exceeds more than 15 mg per liters, technically you're not allowed to reuse or discharge it. But we know those nutrients, nitrogen, and for instance, especially that of ammonium, are very beneficial for plant growth. And we are actually using energy to remove them from wastewater and then using that treated wastewater to plant the trees, and then using chemical fertilizers in the environment in order to sustain the plant growth. And that is a practice that is happening right now because of regulatory limitations. So I think there is also a need for us to revisit some of our regulatory practices that are developed 50, 100 years ago and see if they match with the current technological advancements so that we can truly make a step towards using the treated wastewater and using the nutrients that are in the wastewater in a very sustainable way.
Yeah. What lessons can be learned from the Saudi experience and balancing afforestation and water demand and water scarcity and water management? What lessons can we learn?
Well, I think if there is, I would say, a political will, and there is a support, and there is a clear direction in general, and there is also a value up in all levels, that you will achieve your target. Because while we study also the master plan, we benchmark with a lot of other experience, a lot of countries, and we have seen their mistakes and how they also, just for for the announcement, for the media only. But here, no. What we are doing here, we walk the talk, and we actually, there is a government and there is a political will, there is a support, there is also the engagement of the whole community. You know, plantation and environment, it became everybody responsibility. You know, and luckily we have a lot of colleagues. I mean, there is one of the awareness initiative that's to educate the people about that. So this is actually, this is the big lesson that all others they could learn from our experience. And also, we did not also give up because of the climate. No, we try to create the way that's to reverse our land and restore it to be, it's like, you know, 70, 80 years ago, that's when there is also there is a lot of vegetation covered, and there is a lot of, I would say, mountain forests and others. So we walk the talk. This is, I think, the big lesson that others they could learn from us.
We're very strong-willed and very strong-minded and very stubborn, let's say, maybe. When we want to do something, we'll do it, and we'll do it right.
I think I just want to also add on to a point. I mean, it's very great points. I think when we first started the report and strategizing it, we're relying a lot on some of the other success stories from China, from US, but those success stories actually are not directly applicable or translatable to a hyper-arid environments like Saudi Arabia. So I think one of the main goal and one of the main success stories that will come out from this massive effort is to show that hyper-arid environment like Saudi Arabia can also achieve our goals of planting 10 billion trees in a very sustainable way. And that will set a precedence, case study basis of how hyper-arid environment can do it.
Well, I think we'll look forward to KAUST's report in a couple of years on this, the success of the case study. Well, this is it for now, but I would encourage the public and everyone in the audience to please ask questions to Dr. Hong and Engineer Ahmed. Is there a mic?
Thank you very much for that interesting talk. Could you tell us, please, a little bit about the environmental benefits of the trees being planted? Are there types of trees that are able to sequester more carbon than others? What's worked in Saudi and in the region? There's not a lot that's known about our region outside, so be curious to know what type of trees that are native to this region can sequester carbon effectively, and also how long it takes.
Well, I think when it comes to the climate summit or COPs, that's definitely, this is the big question. That's what's the percentage or the quantity of carbon to be sequestrated. So definitely the mangrove, this is one of the biggest, I would say so far, especially in Saudi Arabia, that it will sequestrate carbon, and we will increase the carbon or the mangrove forest by planting more and other native trees. So far, there is a lot of trees, and it's not only trees, and also the rangeland themselves, rehabilitating of the land and the rangeland, it will increase the carbon storage in the soil. So that it will give us. There is a lot of figures. There is a lot of numbers that so far we study it, and we depend on a lot of also. I would say certified entity to give us the exactly, but we still, I mean, not yet finalized to be announced, but there is a lot of a good result that it will help us, the country, to achieve our ambition and by the carbon neutrality by 2060, inshallah.
Do you have another question? I think we need a mic here, please. Front. Right here.
First of all, thank you so much for this informative session talk. I have one question for Engineer Ahmed. I would like to ask you regarding the restoring the ecosystem. So how that would be or will be beneficial for the second phase of the roadmap. So if we are talking, I mean, on one hand, we are talking about the restoring the ecosystem, and on the other hand, we know about like cultivating as much as possible, which is, I think, not considerable at this study. So how that will be beneficial to utilize the resources in the second phase? Will that be saving, I mean, some of the cost? Will that be beneficial on other aspects? Could you please elaborate more about this?
Well, thank you. The most important thing here, we are not planting trees, all registering or only counting numbers only. No, we are talking about the sustainability. So as I mentioned in the beginning, that's the most important, to protect the existing and try to remove all the pressure from that. And also we have seen so far the natural regeneration by protecting specific area. It's really, it's great, you know. Sometimes it's 1,000 times than the 1,000%, you know. So this is one of the, I would say this is the key success factors, that by protecting, and it might be enhancing a little bit of the land and the soil, that it will give us more and more the natural generation. So that's one element. Definitely it will reduce the cost, because it will be accounted as part of the 10 billion trees. So this is one factor. The other thing, learning, because we have 7 years till 2030. We will use that conservative, or I would say natural-based solution. We will learn during the 7 years, especially because we finish actually the planning phase and we start now the execution. We will learn from the execution, and try also with the innovation and the science, that there is a lot of new technology. It will help us in the breeding of using the tissue culture, selecting the strong plants to be planted, and other techniques, trying to mitigate and the plant disease and other effects that it may affect the plants, using the right technology, using also the soil enhancement. Definitely it will give us the opportunity to learn more and reduce the cost when we start the aggressive scenario from 2031.
Can I address the first question just now? So I think those are really great questions, the first question. So second question as well. I have a response for the first question. So as part of at COWS, I'm not a plant person, I'm not a plant scientist, but at COWS we do have colleagues from the Center of Desert Agriculture that has been spending quite a long number of years to map the native plant species. They are doing genome sequencing to understand what are the functional gene traits of those native plant species, what makes them drought tolerant. We also have efforts that are related to plant growth, promoting addition of microorganisms to help plants better tolerate drought events or water stress events. So those are things that are related to the plant side, which would be very valuable information to advise, or to potentially consider, not advise, but potentially consider what types of plants to grow as part of the massive afforestation effort. With regards to the second question of how much carbon dioxide how much carbon can be sequestered from those plants, that's a rather tricky question, because as we know, the early stage of plant growth, you don't really sequester much carbon. Requires a certain number of years for the trees, the shrubs, and plants to be mature in order to really significantly sequester carbon. And those are things that we have to acknowledge. So I think there are efforts to really map at different stages of the plant how much carbon are we sequestering, so that they can be fine-tuned as well. Because we also have to bear in mind that it's the early stage of the plant growth that is going to require more water to sustain the plants to grow. And when they die, they're basically emitting carbon as well. So the early stage is going to be a very critical stage. But once the plants mature, usually the amount of water that's required is also diminished, and that's when they can really sequester carbon. So it's going to be a thing that has to be continuously monitored, accounted for in terms of the carbon, water, energy nexus, and audited accordingly so that the strategy can be reiterated. With regards to the third question of what are the benefits related to the urban population, we think more can be done. In fact, I think that it's already been done as part of the execution plan that Engineer Ahmed mentioned just now, which is to divert our massive afforestation strategies towards the urban environment, because that's when the urban population can really benefit from the efforts, because you can have urban cooling effects. You can also have a much better green recreational park areas to sustain and promote well-being of the urban populations. And most importantly, you can also make use of certain engineered urban structures to have plants growing and water coexisting together so that you can achieve a so-called phytoremediation effort and also green water spaces. And at the same time, also use that as an engineered strategy to minimize any extreme weather conditions that are most likely going to affect Saudi Arabia as part of the climate change. So we're going to expect more extreme variable events, rainy events. Just this year alone, we actually experienced quite a significant number of rain events last year as well. So those extreme weather events will require engineered strategies, and that's when we have all those areas that we can store the water, utilize them in the future, that are going to be very beneficial as well.
Cost effectivity is something that we didn't really tap into. Can we just, if any questions? All right, question here in the front, and then two.
Thank you for this very rich discussion. I'm a professor in Paris, and I'm having a project in UAE to create a center for outdoor comfort. And I'm specialized in urban heat island issues, but what I'm interested in, and you talked a lot about water scarcity, you talk about biodiversity, you didn't talk about agriculture and the crops, how we can have these issues treated the same way. You talked about nexus between energy, between water and, I don't know.
The food, water, energy
water,
nexus.
energy nexus?
Yeah. No, you didn't say energy, but yeah, I mean water and energy, it's very important also. But do you have any idea about these issues of crops and agriculture without having greenhouses?
Well, agriculture, it's part of the master plan, and it's a domain standalone, and using the treated water to plant economic trees that it gives the benefits, economic benefits, and also carbon sequestration at the same time. Using the mountain terraces, luckily we have thousands of mountain terraces, especially in the south, using the water harvesting, and it's part of the SGI. So there is a strategy also how to plant the economic trees or agricultures, and by planting economic trees, using the renewable water, we call it the renewable water, with the treated water, and also water harvesting. And luckily now there was a resistance in the old days from the farmers that not to use the treated water, but now there is after the MEWA, or the Ministry of Environment, Water, Agriculture, they have also a Center of Excellence, and they try it. The farmers, they have seen the benefits of and the quality of the water it's been used for irrigation, the treated water, and there is a big competition, and now it's increasing. So there's another benefits for the whole community and the economy of the country, and definitely for the food security in general.
So I think we all acknowledge agriculture is a very, very water-intensive activity. Worldwide, not just Saudi Arabia alone, agriculture accounts for 70% of the global freshwater use. But of course, food security is at the same level as water security. So I think the trick is how to balance both sides. Imagine that both are on the same scale. How do you balance food security in a rather volatile region like the Middle East versus water security? And you mentioned specifically, let's not talk about greenhouse, maybe because there's some ways, I mean, we know that greenhouse is not, the current way greenhouse is structured, it's not going to produce food at the level as how we are traditionally doing it. But I think there are more sustainable practices. For instance, the way that we are doing irrigation can be improved in those massive environments. How we should be doing the irrigation, when we should be doing it, how much that's when precision agriculture is very important, to really account for how much water is truly needed, because majority of the agricultural practices right now is using much more water than is actually truly needed. So a lot of the water goes into the environment, gets into the atmosphere, and they never come back again as rainfall in the Middle East. So that's actually a huge amount of water that's lost. Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
Additional to that, I'm just recapping. Also, we are in Mayor Ministry of Water and Environment, Water, Agriculture. There is also a program called REEF to enhance the agroforestry and to support also the farmers using the treated water and using the mountain terraces. But of course, you have sometimes some initiative you have to start with the government, so they support the farmers to again to restore the mountain terraces and to plant a lot of economic trees. So it's again, this is another support from the government, and in the same times to enhance the local community and to increase the agroforestry, especially in the mountain terraces in the southwest.
So water tariffs also, water tariffs can also be considered because currently the price of water is not priced properly in the region. So water pricing needs to be reconsidered to make sure that people use water accordingly, not to generate wastage, particularly in the agriculture sector. But of course, that's something that has to be involved the different stakeholders in the discussion. And the use of treated wastewater, which was mentioned just now, we can think about the use of treated wastewater for food production, not in the traditional settings, like what you are imagining, not big farmlands and all, but we can think about, let's say, the concept of urban farming. Mm-hmm. So in urban farming, where we're talking about organic produce, local farming, where we utilize the treated wastewater to grow the fruit in the urban landscapes, and then immediately use them, you save not just in terms of the water, you produce the food, and you save on the energy cost of transportation as well. So those are the things that can be thought about in a much more creative way, unlike the way we are thinking about food production that is generally happening in some rural areas.
We had another question at the front row, please. And if you'd like to know a little bit more, we have a representative here in the audience from MIWA. So, Mohandes Wael, maybe you could...
Thank you. Really fascinating talk. I really appreciate it. So with Saudi Arabia focused at the moment on helping end conflicts in the Middle East, right? That's the focus of Saudi Arabia, and to help promote economic development and cooperation across the region. Do any of your initiatives at the moment involve cooperating with Saudi Arabia's neighbors? I'm thinking maybe to the north, Iraq, around the Red Sea area, also around the Gulf. I mean, now, particularly after Saudi Arabia's agreement with Iran in March to resume diplomatic ties. I mean, could these initiatives benefit from cooperation with neighbors? Thank you.
Well, yes, because Middle East Green Initiative, mainly it's been, I think, designed for the whole Middle East Green Initiative. And I think our colleagues around, they could also give more information about the Middle East and the country that I think around 23 countries, they've been also part of the Middle East Green Initiative to plant 50 billion trees. So there is also, whether I would say individual support usually, and this is what we know from our countries, and also there is, I would say in the when they announced the Middle East Green Initiative, there is also a framework to help and also to support all countries and to share their knowledge. And there was initiative, it's been announced during the G20 when it was hosted in Riyadh, also that's the protect the habitat, and that's initiative, it's international, to monitor and to share the experience between the country among the land, restoring land, and also that's one of the international initiative and efforts from our country.
Any more questions from the audience before we wrap up? All right. Well, it seems like we're good for the day. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to my panelists, Engineer Ahmed and Dr. Hong. Thank you again so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.